Happy Monday, everybody. We have some MicroStrategy news to talk about. We also have PCE coming up, and this is going to affect the Fed funds rate, which we'll get into in a second. And then we'll give Bitcoin a look on its chart. We haven't cracked that 100K yet. It is finding to be somewhat of a psychological resistance so far, and I want to show you some patterns I'm watching. But first, let's look over this MicroStrategy news. So we have news today that MicroStrategy announced acquiring 55,000 Bitcoin for 5.4 billion, boosting their holdings to 386,700 Bitcoin. They are pushing towards 400,000 Bitcoin. They are trying desperately to catch up to BlackRock's IBIT fund. But that's not it. We also have smlr Scientific. They acquired 297 Bitcoin, a much smaller amount, for 29.1 million. And this was between November 18 and 22. They increased their total holdings of Bitcoin to 1,570, and they too expanded their ATM. Now it's at a 100 million capacity from 50 million, which was already generated through gross proceeds. This isn't necessarily new from smlr Scientific, but they are staying the course. They're continuing to accumulate Bitcoin. They are utilizing Bitcoin in their treasury. They're utilizing Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation long term. And I do think before the Bitcoin bull run is at its end, we will see more companies following suit. The ones that get in at the last second might be hurt for a short time, but the ones doing it right now, I think, will benefit from a share price perspective. Next up, let's look at the Fed funds rate. The next Fed meeting is going to be December 18, and we are pretty neck and neck now. We're almost at a 50-50 chance. The market's still expecting a rate cut more than no rate cut, with a 56% chance of a 25 basis point cut and a 43% chance of leaving rates current. Earlier this month, these numbers were nowhere near as close. I think partly what Jerome Powell has said has changed these odds a little bit, but also other inflation data points like PPI, CPI, those have been taking up lately. Those have been showing that inflation is kind of coming back a little bit. But PCE is a little bit different. PCE has been continuing to come down, and our next read is on November 27, in 2 days from now. So maybe they see that psychological 2% inflation. Maybe it ticks up and brings more fear and makes it less likely for a future rate cut in December. This is going to be something the market is watching, and depending on the numbers, this will change the probabilities of a rate cut or no rate cut. Now, what's been going on with Bitcoin? It's been cooling down a little bit. It came up very close to that $100,000 before being rejected. That psychological 100 might be a little tough to crack. I think there's a good possibility we'll still see it before the year ends, but in reality, just follow the cycle. Just because the year is coming to an end doesn't mean the bull cycle is over. Now, one thing we are looking at with Bitcoin is multiple bearish divergences. We have a bearish divergence on the daily. The RSI is coming down while the price was rising. And we are cooling down. Perhaps the market saw this bearish divergence as well. Perhaps the market simply just got rejected off 100 and profit taking ensued. Considering we were under 70,000 through most of October, it's reasonable to expect a little bit of profit taking. Bitcoin is roughly double where it was at some of its worst points in August. So remember, it is not a straight line up. There will be corrections, there will be dips along the way. If you believe we're in an overall bull market, take advantage of the dip buy opportunity. One thing I'm watching for Bitcoin is this broadening pattern. We saw resistance up here on this top line. I do think we're going to come down and test this roughly 93 to 95,000 before we go higher. Maybe the market doesn't have that as a plan, but that is one thing I would expect following this pattern. And going to a shorter term time frame, let me show you guys. You can see that we're starting this kind of a downtrend, this lower highs, lower lows. I do think we're going to kind of continue this pattern, this new pattern we are forming, but we are still overall in this longer bullish pattern. I do think it would be very reasonable to see Bitcoin test 93,000. This was a previous resistance point, and it may flip as a potential support point. If we do not hold 93,000 as a support, things might get a little hectic. Zooming out, you'll see that 93,000 support that I'm talking about here. If we fail that from a technical standpoint, we might come down and test our moving averages, which we have absolutely blasted off from. For one, the 50 MA is in the 70,000s, the 200 MA is in the 60,000s. If Bitcoin trades sideways, of course, these will come up farther. They are lagging indicators. But at some points, we do run a little too far away from them, and we do need to retrace at least a little bit and sort of revert to the norm. Remember earlier in the cycle with all that spot ETF hype, we ran from the 40,000s all the way to nearly 80,000 with almost no end in sight until we got too far from the 250 MA, and then we started retracing, coming back towards them. Perhaps we see that again. I wouldn't be anticipating a Bitcoin in the 80,000s and the 70,000s necessarily again, but anything is possible. Following the cycle, I wouldn't expect it. Q4 is typically always good for Bitcoin. I would expect that we end the year strong. I would expect that we end the year over 100K based on where we are, but you never know. Bitcoin might have other plans. and the cycles might differ from time to time. If we do get a dip towards these moving averages, you better take advantage of Bitcoin. Take advantage of Bitcoin before it goes over 100K. Take advantage now because you don't want to be chasing it in late 2025. Either you want to buy it now or you basically want to wait until 2026, 2027 to reaccumulate. A lot of us that were taking advantage and buying Bitcoin during some of the fearful times in crypto winter, buying Bitcoin in the 30,000s and under, it's kind of hard to want to buy Bitcoin when it's triple from there. It's kind of hard to buy Bitcoin when it's $100,000 nearly. You don't have to go that far in history and find points where you could buy literally triple the amount of Bitcoin for the same amount of cash put in. And we think Bitcoin might be expensive now, just wait until the peak of 2025. At one point, there will be too many sellers and the buyers will be exhausted. The sellers will take over. Remember, 450 Bitcoin per day put into the market seems like nothing. It's a lot easier for the market to absorb that if it's a $20,000 Bitcoin, a $50,000 Bitcoin, versus being a $100,000 Bitcoin, $150,000 Bitcoin. Right now, the market basically needs $42 million per day to keep Bitcoin's inflation level absorbed with buying power. If Bitcoin gets to 150K at some point in 2025, the market will need to buy $67 million worth of Bitcoin per day just to not pull back, just to eat up the incoming supply. 27 million per day to eat the incoming supply versus 67 million is a big difference. I'm not saying the market won't be able to eat this up every day at some points in 2025, but eventually there will be more sellers as well. Eventually, we will get from being so bullish to getting bearish again, to crypto winter coming. Everyone's piling in. At some point, there will be profit taking. At some point, those charts stop looking amazing and start looking ugly. And then you have those technical traders betting against Bitcoin. The technical traders exiting Bitcoin because the chart doesn't look bullish anymore. So remember, Bitcoin will always move in cycles. There will be bull phases. There will be bear phases. Just because there's spot Bitcoin ETFs and institutional adoption and companies are adopting Bitcoin doesn't mean Bitcoin will only go up. So try to keep your FOMO in check, try to keep your fear in check, and follow Bitcoin's cycle above all else. In my opinion, that is the way to go, and that will probably be the way to go for the foreseeable future for Bitcoin. But let me know if you guys think I'm wrong. Will Bitcoin one day not follow its cycle? Let me know what you think about this MicroStrategy news. Are you loading up on MicroStrategy now? Are you just DCAing, or are you looking for better deals, or avoiding it entirely for the rest of the cycle? And what do you think about Bitcoin? Will we break that 100K before the year ends? Do you care regardless? Thanks as always for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.